Ta-da!
Welcome. Oh,
We
yes,
just
ladies and
burst
gentlemen.
on the
boy.
scene there, I tell you.
Oh, yes. That's what we do. See, we burst onto the scene and we bring people into the action. Is that the saying? I'm not sure. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Hollywood Backlot with Lew and you. My name is VashSky, your host of Day of Ceremonies. And coming in from the ghoulish beyond, it is the one, the only, LW Ghost.
No, actually, if you check with Universal, I've been running a coffee shop outside a portal. I wonder if everybody saw that. They made these amazingly great videos showing off each of the portals at Epic. And each of them, one of them is a family backyard, and one of them is a family front yard. And suddenly this portal shows up. Well, one's a park, but the one for a Dark Universe is outside a coffee shop called Lew's. It's spelled Lew''S. A Lew and somebody, I forget. Anyway.
I didn't see that. That's actually pretty cool.
Yes.
You know, there are multiple references to Lew Wasserman in Universal Parks, but one most famous. Here you go. You're back, Lew. Come on, this is awesome.
My ghoulish pallor displays an aura of foreboding. It doesn't look like Lew. It doesn't look like... I said when you showed me this a moment ago, I said the clothes are like great moments with Mr. Wasserman, but on a day when they didn't iron them, you know? The Lincoln-esque pose is just, oh, God. That isn't even close to what he looked like. So,
I do question this statue a little bit because when you see it, especially from afar, it doesn't quite look like him.
Well, at least they didn't do the monster lighting they did to Walt at the other place, so there's that. But
there's that. He was in a different spot. They have relocated him. We were kind of questioning, like, where did he go, right? And it looks like they have a new pedestal for him, which is very interesting. But I guess my question is why doesn't he have his signature glasses? And
good question.
Yeah, why?
And why the bow tie? God,
why the bow tie?
The bow tie, the vest, like I say,
coat?
it's a very Lincoln-y outfit to me.
Yes.
You know, but what the hell?
Was it kind of? Was the idea to make him look almost like a politician? Because where he was before, I have no idea. Yeah, where he was before, he was kind of in this like metropolis almost, this cityscape, right? And so I could like see, oh, okay, well, if you were to come upon this in, say, Philadelphia, for example.
Jan Monroe in our chat says it looks like they put the wrong head on a Confederate statue.
That's terrible. Oh, boy. Yeah, it's just something. I don't know. I wouldn't have gone with that look, to be honest with you. He had such a signature look. That's the thing.
Yeah. What are they afraid of? Oh, well. Well, look, you know, when I was a little kid and my parents took me to New York for the first time and we toured the United Nations, there were these huge tapestries on one wall of the opening plaza, whatever you call it. Mm-hmm. And the guide told us that they were from, I forget what country, somewhere in Middle East or Africa. And that somewhere in this massive, and I mean, it had to be 75 feet tall, tapestry, there was a dropped stitch. And that according to their faith, they did that on purpose because only God is perfect. Well, this goes to show you, here's the anti-epic universe, free universe.
That's very accurate right there. But speaking of history and speaking of things that we want to highlight, you know, from days gone past, it happened to be the 75th anniversary for a very famous film, Lew. Do you know what that was?
Yeah, I do, and I can't think of what it is right now, but I did see that it went by.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it is 75th anniversary of Cinderella.
Ah.
Yes.
Well.
Indeed.
So are they going to get Rebel Wilson to play her in the live-action version just because it doesn't resemble her at all?
Yes,
that would be Conflagration Ella, not Cinderella.
I think that's coming, actually. Now that you say that. But here's some amazing pieces by Mary Blair.
Oh, that's nice.
The color stylings, her color stylings were just amazing. And they really do set themselves apart. The Mary Blair era films, that is, set themselves apart from like the, you know, maybe the initial golden age, right? Where you have Pinocchio and Snow White and Fantasia. the color styling I thought was
that little bit of kind of red magenta and that star on the left, and the deeper blues on top of the lighter blues on top of that. This is very nice. There we go.
Very, very good stuff. I just her pieces just really pop out, and were definitely revolutionary at the time. Walt, I guess, the allegation was that she was his favorite artist, and she was so in demand that she kind of had a what do you want to say? She was in the studio and out of the studio quite often.
Well, you spread yourself where people demand you, I guess. I don't know.
Indeed. Speaking of great art, this piece by Herb Ryman caught my eye as well. Joshua Harris has a whole thread of things depicting of pictures and images depicting Cinderella Castle, its construction, its formation, its development, the models, and so forth. So definitely go out and seek out Joshua Harris. That's JL Humney on Twitter right there, or X. Seek out those posts because they're really, really cool.
Yeah, he's got more goodies. And then, of course, his musical stuff is just spectacular, too. If you're a fan of original Epcot and the optimism therein, you got to go hear Josh's great collection of all the great music.
Absolutely. Great collection of music. He has restored so many pieces, and not just music, by the way. He's restored artwork as well and made it available for everybody to see, which is really, really awesome. It's one of the most amazing things he does. So definitely check out E82 online as well. The link for that should be somewhere. If it's not somewhere, Tom, go ahead and put that in the chat, if you could, please. Now, there is one thing that you wanted to go ahead and bring up, Lew, and that is how the MCU, or the concept of it, the shared universe of films, that dates back quite a ways. Lew, you want to take us through this?
Yeah, this was a fascinating article, and I'm sure we have the link there somewhere, talking about the whole idea of a shared universe of different characters all living in the same space really began with the Universal monsters, because they wanted to do each other's movies. And obviously, the originals, Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley, as far as I know, never got together and said, hey, let's do a team up where somebody snaps their finger and half of our monsters die. But anyway, it's a real interesting piece that this was something that never, ever occurred to me. And hopefully you will find it entertaining, too. And then, of course, there's that book that I've cited a few times. You've got hidden in your stack of stuff somewhere that goes into more detail about the Universal Monster movies than you'd ever want to, which is why I kind of got bored halfway through. But still, if you want to look up something, it's all there. And you have that book somewhere about the Universal Monsters, the cover.
I do. I actually have a post that I want to share, because Deborah, who is in the chat right now, actually took your recommendation, Lew, and actually purchased a copy of the book, which had just come in. Now, what's interesting about that is apparently one of our contacts here at That Park Place actually knows the author and has spoken with him before. Apparently, he's on Twitter as well. So he's a recommended follow. I'm just trying to get that information up right now, which I should have had before, perhaps. but there you go. This article here, what I think is most ironic about it is that obviously, when you think of shared universe, you definitely think about the MCU. This article does a great job in showing, no, it dates back long before, and really the very first big effort was...
and of course, in the comics, it's before Marvel. It certainly is DC, wouldn't it be? I mean, Superman and Batman and the World's Finest and all of that. Justice League. But, which I think predate most of the Marvel stuff. I could be wrong, but I think so.
I think so.
I mean, it's separate. The point being, there's that great book. God, this guy is wonderfully obsessive about every little detail, and I appreciate that. But it's a better reference than it is let's sit down at night with a cozy fire and a good drink and read, because it just it gives you every detail you ever didn't know you wanted to know. Which is, I'm not dissing it. I'm just letting you know in advance, if you get it, that's what you'll be getting.
And that is the author's Twitter account right there. Jim L. Lieber, which is how he spells it on the cover of the book. And I'm going to have to thank Laura G for that information related to that. She is a remarkable source when it comes to classic and vintage cinema right there. I've actually thought about having her on the show because she's such an insight.
Interesting movies in her background there, I'll tell you that.
Yes.
From Footlight Parade to Casablanca to Stagecoach, Laura.
She's all about that. And she's also, I would say, the best source to go to when it comes to like honoring celebrities that have recently passed away from that era, because so many times we don't hear about that.
We're dropping left and right, I tell you. What was that Monty Python song about decomposing composers? Remember that?
That's grim.
Beethoven's gone, but his music lives on, and you could write to Debussy, but he won't be able to write back to you, and all. It's a funny song. Anyway,
one last thing about this. You remember, Lew, that Dark Universe or Universal tried to do what they did back in the mid of the 20th century right there, where they had this kind of mashup of all these different characters in the form of Dark Universe, which started with that 2017 The Mummy film with Tom Cruise. And if you believe the reports, it may have started in other places as well. Did not turn out nearly as successful, however.
However, what is interesting to me from my memories of the early days of the Universal Studio Tour at Hollywood is every time the tram went through the original Court of Miracles, a vast majority of the people, the tourists, the people looking at this, kind of quieted, kind of hushed, and kind of said, oh my God, that's the place, for whichever movie they were remembering of those wonderful monster movies. But they really, 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 really revered that. And of course, later it burned down and they rebuilt it exactly the same. But the Court of Miracles was a big highlight of the original tram tour at Universal. The real
get
Universal.
A link here. Give me a second. The Court of Miracles, big highlight, like Lew said, on the studio tour, the tram tour that you can actually still take today. But yes, the original was damaged for sure, and they rebuilt it just like it was, or at least a pretty close facsimile to it. You can see these are the iconic sets that all those movie monster films basically took place in. It was pretty cool.
It was every village in Middle Europe. And we're having this discussion. I'm trying to think of which show it was on, but somebody was talking about Eastern Europe. And it's not technically Eastern Europe per se, because it's the Balkans. And because you have to remember that the Balkans were not just influenced by European architecture, but also by the invasions and in some cases conquests of the Turks and the Arabs. And indeed, that's what the real Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, was fighting against, was the invasion of the Turks. So there's the best example I know, if you really want to take a trip somewhere, is go to Budapest, because it's the city of Buda and the city of Pest, and they're across the river from each other. And one is very classical European, and one is very obviously, and I'm using this word even though some people react negatively to it, but it's accurate in this case, Oriental. It's very, Turkish. And of course, all of these cultures merged over the years. I mean, what people call the Black Irish are actually the sailors from the Spanish Armada who washed up on the shores of Ireland after the battle and became part of the Irish people, but brought their Hispanic culture, genetics to it. That whole part of the world is fast. I've been there a couple of times to Czechoslovakia and Hungary, and it's we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
No.
And of course, remember, you're looking at all these pictures of them blank, not dressed for filming. And so for filming, you would have maybe planters and signs and trash in the streets and street lamps, because you notice there's no street lamps because it's, are we in the gas lamp period or are we in the electric lamp period? And
right.
And all of that is adaptable on a movie backlot. So when you see spare blank movie backlot, whether it's this or New York Street or anything else, just know that it's not dressed for production, and therefore it looks kind of sad by comparison. But now, it is a blank slate on which art directors paint their magic, so to speak.
Those dressings that you were speaking about, would they usually be stored in the like the prop warehouse, for example?
Yeah, some of them, or if it's a particularly larger budget, you'll make it original. I mean, if it's MacGyver goes to Bulgaria, then they pull out whatever they've got and make it so. But if it's a movie, they'll do them originally, and then those will go in storage to get reused. Everything gets reused. We have an expression called fold and hold, which means you put everything in a wooden box and stick it somewhere just in case you need it again. So,
right. Because there are studio assets, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway,
very, very interesting.
Anyway, but like I say, the reverence for those monsters. Well, there. See, look at the difference of how that looks.
Right.
With people and awnings and streetlights and of course, as I've said, if it's old times, they dump dirt on the ground and it's a dirt road. And if it's newer, they put fake cobblestones. And if it's newer still, it's asphalt. But this is how, especially back when the old MGM lot still existed. This is how the Man from U.N.C.L.E. could go to different countries every week without ever leaving Hollywood. Right. Because they had everything over there at MGM. They had Arabian villages and Greek tavernas and French farmhouses and jungles. And well, see there, at least there's a couple of signs up for that one. But Apotheca, and then but you got the German version on this side and the French version on the other side. So, and that's not Court of Miracles. That's the other European street at Universal, the one that can also be turned into a Roman or Greek area. But
gotcha. Okay. Man, very, very fascinating, very, very interesting, and I know the reverence that you're talking about there, Lew, when people come upon this area of the backlot. It's like, these are where the black and whites were shot. It's classic monster films. Very, very cool. Oh, I just love film history so much. But sometimes we have to go a little bit contemporary because, well, there are things happening in the Hollywood world. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Speaking of which, here we go. Somebody who's doing amazing stuff, at least on YouTube, when it comes to documenting Disney productions in the theme parks. Here we go. Cliff Flicks with $10. Could Epic Universe cause a revival or rebirth of Dracula, Wolfman, Black Lagoon, Creature, or other character movies that tie directly into Dark Universe? This would be the attraction first, movie's second.
Well, I was with you all the way until you got to that last sentence, because technically, no, the movies, then the attraction, then the movies. It's not like, for example, making movies of Pirates of the Caribbean or The Haunted Mansion or The Country Bears, like was done, where it originated as it totally became a movie series. But sure it could. I mean, will we see whoever the next Angelina Jolie is playing Victoria Frankenstein in the movie? I don't know. But yeah, hell, why not? Why not? Hollywood is, as they say, retro-mingent. And if you don't know what that means, you can go look it up, because I'm not going to define it. But it means it recycles itself, to put it mildly.
It does. And we know the theme park world has a very interesting history. Oh, not that. It has a very interesting history of like causing a resurgence of these franchises and brands, or allowing them to endure longer than maybe the expiration date of their film window would allow.
Well, yeah. But on the other hand, I don't know about anybody else. Obviously, some people loved it from the get-go and watched them all, but I had zero interest or connection to the whole Isle of Burke, How to Train Your Dragon universe. But once I knew it was going to be here, I went and looked at the movies, and they're fun, and boy, are they deep and exhaustive. And I mean, obviously Harry Potter is. And of course, this is an interesting place because the ride happened after they decided, no, we're not going to make any more Fantastic Beasts because they didn't do well enough. Because this being in France, it was like, well, how do we get it back to England? Well, you walk through the flue and there you are. So, because you couldn't do the Hogwarts train like they did at the other two parks. So,
man.
And I think it's so brilliant because one more England would be one too many. Having France as the visual representation gives you a whole different atmosphere.
So that's why I'm really looking forward to this, because it's a different flavor from the Wizarding World that we just have never seen before. And yes, even though the movies didn't do well, that doesn't mean the setting is any less impressive.
Yeah, and that also was why they made the movies, because we'll give them something different. Well, maybe they didn't want it that different was the ultimate result of that, but either way it works.
Either way it works.
And then, like I say, the officially, I don't know if it's official, but it's pretty well rumored plan for the first expansion of the Harry Potter stuff at Epic Universe is the Hogwarts dining hall. It's going to be a sort of dinner theater thing where the food magically shows up on your plate and all kinds of other fun stuff. So we shall see.
The works for quite some time. So exciting to see that and to hear that. I'm incredibly excited for Epic Universe, but I will agree with Clifflix. I think that will cause a resurgence of some of this classic.
And you see, Clifflix, they tested it with that restaurant at the studios. What was it? Where was it? I forget exactly. But they did a kind of a monster-themed restaurant to see if people recognized these characters. And now, although I have not seen them show up in any of these visuals, supposedly those little caricatures of the monsters from that restaurant are going to show up somewhere here. So that'll be fun. That'll be fun. But this week, of course, the big deal was them showing off all the food. Oh, my God. The level of presentation involved is just astounding. It really, really is.
They continue to impress. They continue to impress. And I think Universal has really stepped up their food game quite a bit in the last, I would say, 6 years or so.
Yeah, because they were never exactly famous for it. Well, they were famous, but in the wrong way. That stupid, what's it called? Mythos? That place at Islands of Adventure that everybody, the greatest theme park restaurant. No, it wasn't. It never was. It never would be. It was loud. It was astoundingly noisy, and the food was astoundingly mediocre. And why it got so much attention over the years, I'll never know. I just know I ate there, and So, we shall see what they do with that.
Not so good. I never ate at Mythos. Or I have never eaten at Mythos. I've heard some of the food options are good, but at the same time, it's like, really the best in Orlando? I don't know about all that. That sounds crazy.
When you compare it to some of the Epcot stuff in its prime, and to what Morimoto's got one over at Disney Springs, and somehow I don't think. Well, anyway, that's a tangent we needn't venture on any further.
Thank you so much, Clifflix, for that super chat. Awesome, and I think you're on point. Creating an amazing discussion there. Speaking of amazing discussion, though, this film is it's got the whole industry talking. Maybe not in quite the way that Disney would have preferred.
The old, as long as they spell your name right, you're all right thing no longer applies, is what you're trying to say.
yes. Yeah. Captain America Brave New World obviously is released this weekend here, and it's creating quite the buzz with very poor reviews. Obviously, the critics have been very brutal, and some people have been looking at the popcorn meter and saying, hey, listen, look at the audience is 80%. That's pretty good. Well, not so much. Not with a B- cinema score. So that's not great. And cinema score is, in my experience, has been unbelievably accurate, determining the legs of a film. We know that Marvel films are usually front-loaded pretty heavily, but for this film, and considering its tracking, it really needed to leg out in order to get anywhere close to its production budget. And unfortunately, that might not happen. It might be pretty brutal. I think there's like a number floating out there, 88 million for the 3-day, maybe 100 so for the 4-day. Lew, your take on cinema score, box office, legs, your thoughts?
Look, the thing that impresses me, and I have not seen the movie and haven't any great urge to rush out and do it, I must say. The thing that impresses me about all the reviews I read, from the big outfits like the trades to little ones, is the regret the palpable regret that people say, gosh, I wanted to like it. I wanted it to be great. There's a little moment or here and here, but I'm sorry to tell you, doesn't make it. You don't see any of that regret about Snow White with Rachel. You don't see any of that regret about Bree and any of these other things that have stunk, joined up. But because I think both Captain America and Anthony Mackie are beloved in so many ways that it's like, why'd you do this to them? But anyway.
Yeah, I do really get that sense, Lew.
Yeah.
It's
and you know, the best parts of the first Cap movies were the throwback parts, the Stark World's Fair parts, the imitation Sherman Brothers marching theme song parts, because they set it in a time and a place, and you know, and of course, on the other hand, he was fighting these things called NAZIs that nowadays are everywhere, it seems, but in those days we knew who they were. So that sort of made it an anachronism in a strange way too. But anyway,
now
look, you can't shoot a movie for years and have it make money. Let's just say that.
And let's go over that process because that's the thing, right? So
yeah.
So if you look at reviews are saying this, by the way. If you look down here, it says, I just want to go ahead and get the exact quote here. Yes. Despite the admirable efforts of director Julius Onah and his cast, Captain America Brave New World shows all the signs of a production that was tampered with almost to the point of self-collapse. It's hard to discuss this film and not talk about the multiple reshoots and story rewrites that were reported in the trades. These are all regular procedures in the filmmaking process. I don't know about that. And even the best movies have been improved with similar retooling. In truth, Captain America Brave New World probably did get better with how it was reshaped multiple times, but it only makes you think what the hell they were doing prior.
Why do we naturally assume it got better? Maybe it just got bad in a different way.
That's a good point. Lateral, right?
There's lots of different ways. There must be 50 ways to screw a movie. But all of them start with not having a script everybody agrees on and shooting it.
Correct.
So, you know, look, and especially a script that we are told was much more political and was assuming an outcome that did not happen in the election. That's a bad idea anyway when we're dealing with, look, I expect, well, let's put it this way. If you think of the great political or world conflict movies of our time, time, my time, not your time necessarily. Your time may be different. But if you think of things like Failsafe or things like, well, that's a good example. They were dealing with real world issues, but they were giving you characters in the form of a president and an assistant and that you could get behind. But when you say, hey, I want to go see some superheroes beat up some bad guys, you don't think, yes, and I want them to be relevant to a particular political point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, even the other one with Robert Redford as the kind of, what was he, a sneaky senator or whatever he was?
Yes.
He was that one even stepped over that line a little, but not too far. And of course, the X-Men comics have done it quite a bit with all of these anti-mutant acts and trying to make mutants a symbol of racial intolerance. But still, guys, look, I got to tell you, when I see something that calls something part of phase whatever, I'm automatically putting up my arms and saying, wait. Do I have to do homework to know how this works? Do I have to, you know, the fact that they could put some mediocre movies in the middle of some of these longer term plot streams with Marvel and get people to still show up figuring I got to see it because I don't want to miss the in-between of whatever, those days are gone. Those days are long gone. And they wish they weren't. And look, when you make a movie, when you commit to actually start shooting, you have a schedule, you have a budget, and you have a time limit. Yes. Unless you don't. And when people like that, well, it's commonplace nowadays. Maybe it's commonplace, but that don't make it right. I was mentioning to you when we of the genre guys, who I hope you're all enjoying, did come on, cue me again, Vash. I'm falling asleep.
Demolition Man.
Demolition Man, yes. Demolition Man, great movie, fun movie. The 3 seashells and the square meter on the wall and great action. And yet they took 6 years working the script through before they ever shot a frame of film. Well,
right.
If you do that with this, you wind up, for better or worse, I guess, with what they've got now, but you haven't shot 3 movies along the way with all the concomitant expense. And let's remember, when you read all these estimates of what did it really cost, and well, we can tell because of those tax filings in Great Britain. But remember first that all of these tax incentive programs, whether they're in England or in Georgia or Louisiana or British Columbia or anywhere, the whole point of them is that the government says, well, you know what? If we give them a reason to make it here, we'll have more local people employed, either people working on the film or people working on the catering or on the props or on all the stuff associated with the film, the hotels where they stay. Everything is going to generate employment. In the entire history of these kinds of incentives, and the same kind are used, government putting up money or giving tax breaks to build everything from stadiums to shopping malls, whatever. All of the accounting that's ever been done says no. You don't get back as much as you give up. So remember that the only things that count when you hear, oh, they spent X number of dollars, when we know because of these tax receipts, are the local hires, are the local services, are the local props and food and whatever else. It doesn't include the stars. It doesn't include the director. It doesn't include the executives. It doesn't include all the people back at the studio or the lawyers or the PR people or anything else.
Above the line talent.
Right. And so the line, by the way, is between the folks who, I'm a sergeant, I work for a living, don't call me sir, and the people who get. But the point is, whatever that number is, add at least 3/4 of it again to what the reality is, and especially over time. Look, when you say to Harrison Ford or Anthony Mackie or anybody in this movie, listen, we're going to make this movie. We're going to sign you up to do it. It's going to be X number of dollars. It's going to be X number of weeks out of your life. And they make a deal where they say, can you come back for 3 or 4 weeks? Or they get paid some more. You better believe they do. It's moments of their life they will not be able to live otherwise again.
Yes.
So at that point, all bets are off.
But it's other projects, though, Lew. You have to pay extra for them to come back because they have other projects scheduled.
Exactly. And therefore they are, we always talk about the opportunity cost when we talk about Disney Plus, about, gee, if they'd have just licensed all this stuff to Netflix, they would have made more money because they wouldn't have had all the expense of running this failed streaming network. Well, the opportunity cost for actors and directors and grips and everybody is the same thing. Oh, you want me back? Well, I was going to do this other picture, but I guess if you want me back, you'll have to pay me X because it makes up for that other deal. And remember, folks, when you are above the line, you are getting residuals. You are getting subsidiary rights, as they call them.
Right.
And I don't care how big a hit this movie is or isn't. If you could have made 2 more while you were making it, that's 3 shots at getting those residuals, isn't it?
Right.
So the math just says this is a bad way to make a movie, whether it's a good movie or a bad movie. This is a really stupid, dumb way to make a movie. And it ain't rocket science to know that, because we've only been making it the other way, these 100 years or so of the cinema. So for these people to say, oh, well, it's commonplace, it's no big deal. It either betrays remarkable stupidity or remarkable pixie dustery, but either way, it ain't so.
Well, let's go over the production process, because I think a lot of people. I don't want to say anybody is doesn't know or have a clear understanding of what the production process is. However, Lew, you've worked on multiple productions. We have an understanding of what it's like from previous pictures and so forth. I just kind of want to go ahead and set up the context to really create a framework in people's minds about just how expensive the production process can be. I think the best way to do that is an old documentary. Lauren knows what I'm talking about here, I'm sure. Going over the making of The Phantom Menace. The episode 1, obviously released in summer of 1999. Yes, that was the start of the prequel films. But there was a great documentary tracking the making of it from multiple different angles, especially from George Lucas's perspective on what went into actually constructing that film. And I think it's a great resource to kind of go over a effects budget film, or I'm sorry, an effects film. But also, too, George Lucas, you'll know, he was self-funding this operation and enterprise. So he was very much aware about how much money was actually being spent. This scene right here was 5 months before shooting. He's going over very carefully what is going to be a shot in which what piece of a shot is going to have to be actually shot in location, what can be shot in studio, what can be created in visual effects, and what might be a model shot, and so forth. He's going over this in this way because he has to understand, and everybody has to understand around him, the producer, the head of FX for ILM, the creature guy, everybody has to know what they're going to be in charge of constructing for this film. And it's a very
and not just what they're building
process.
Not just what they're building, but from what angle it's going to be seen.
Correct.
Does it need to go all the way around to the backside, or is it just the front right, or whatever it happens to be? Yes. That's why we storyboard. That's why we plan. That's why this happens. By the way, can I just jump into this?
Please.
I see Jan Monroe in the chat says, quote, reshoots are normal. After all, you could be cutting a movie together and there's a huge stain on the hero's shirt, and the next cut, the stains are gone. Do that if you too many times. Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about with reshoots here. We're talking about days and weeks and months. I will tell you a funny story. One day I was visiting a friend of mine who was directing an episode of Star Trek Voyager. And when they broke for lunch, there was a little half-court basketball court outside the stage, and everybody ran out there and sort of unwound and played. And we came back from lunch, and we shot a few scenes, and then they realized that, I forget which character, didn't have his communicator on his uniform because it had fallen off playing basketball. And it was, oh, God, we got to reshoot all those scenes. And, of course, I raised my hand, as I commonly do around here, and said, no, wait a minute, leave it. You know why? You guys will all win every Star Trek trivia contest because you'll know what was the show where the communicator disappeared and came back. So you know, it's not about stained shirts. It's about, we decided that scene didn't work, but we got another idea. By the way, reshoot does not automatically mean we can use the same sets, the same costumes, the same everything else, and just reshoot. And I have told the story of one show that I was on once that was slated for a mid-season fill-in for something that failed, but they weren't sure which time slot it was going into. Mm-hmm. And we had to reshoot something. And so they brought in the edited version with the bad scene so we would match everything so it would fit in evenly, right? Now, in those days, you might remember, was the dawn of the era of the news break, where at the hour mark, they would slip in a little 2-minute thing from the network news to kind of promote you sticking around until midnight when you could see the rest of it. Well, guess what? Every half hour in the primetime schedule was slightly different in how much time was provided from the show. Like a few seconds, a few minutes, whatever, because those news breaks were different depending on the time of day. And remember, this show did not yet have a time slot where it was going. So when they brought in the edited version of what we were going to fix by shooting an insert to it, it had 9 sets of time code on it. 9.
That's so crazy. That's
because all within a second or two. But the point is, well, if it goes on at 8:30 on Tuesday, it's this one. But if it's 9:30 on Thursday, it's this one. I mean, that's the level at which this stuff has to be plotted and figured out and calculated for. So it's not such an easy thing as well. There was a dirty shirt. Let's do it again. So anyway, go on with this. I just thought I'd add that context.
Oh no, I love it because to provide a sense of the reshoot process.
No, I did not, Mark Bailey. I said I was visiting a friend who was directing Voyager. So
yes.
Thank you for playing, but nope.
There you go. This is producer Rick McCallum scouting out a location that they're going to use, not for production necessarily, not for inviting film crew down, but actually to construct the sets and the props, like the big pod racing engines. Actually rented out a warehouse. I think it was the Rolls-Royce factory. Huge space right there. You can see what went into constructing all of the sets and all of the props and everything like that for this particular film. I mean, it was a very huge process. Again, if you're doing all this for principal photography and you go, well, let's go ahead and just reshoot the film again, this is the process that you might have to undertake.
And what if you didn't fold and hold? What if you had it all torn down because you didn't want to pay for storage?
Exactly. And well, it's because it's George Lucas doing it himself. Maybe that wasn't even possible. So you gotta think about that. There's another conversation here about the budget and going into all that. This was the apparatus for the Nemodians, by the way, is what you're seeing right there. I want to go ahead and play this out because I think it's a really interesting conversation.
How are we going to start? What are we going to do? If I put my producer hat on, then it's purely, I don't care how we get this done. I don't care who pays for it. I got to somehow get my movie made. And our budget is $50 million. That's how much money we have.
$50 million. Okay. The Marvel films are usually 4 times this, at least.
It's...
Well, George, the sentiments that you express, I am not unsympathetic with. I think you can agree that we're not really fat on how much time goes into animating a particular thing or building a particular creature or environment.
So Judith and I looked at every single pod race shot. We had the 14-minute version of it, and we identified the environments that we would apply. To do EB Crater, we've got 19,000 to create that environment.
But I mean, there's $600,000 worth of pods. Mm-hmm. Then you actually have to do the shots,
which is 16 million, right?
So where is the thing there that breaks down how much it costs per shot to fly a pod?
So that's the director, George Lucas, going over the budget for, in this case, ILM, in order to get these visual shots produced. Very obviously, he's got a pretty good understanding of what these should cost and what could be afforded by this production and so forth, and what they have to cut in order to get this thing under budget.
But the important thing is, he said, our budget is $50 million, period.
Yes.
Make it work within that, or show me why it absolutely can't, and we'll change it. But not, well, it's sort of kind of maybe 50 if it isn't 60, if it isn't 180, if it isn't, oh, well, people will see it anyway because it's Disney, it's Marvel.
Right? And that's kind of, this is why I'm showing you this.
If everybody if somehow Bob Iger and KK and the rest of them were able to wire into the DNA of every human being on planet Earth, so that 30% of them, all it had to do was see the mouse or the word Disney or the word Marvel on it, and they would automatically lay out whatever it costs to go see it. It still isn't enough.
Yes.
It's very true. There's a Bond story with the world is not enough. Well, so there you go. And at that point, somebody with a cooler head has to say, excuse me, as I do around here a lot, what does God need with a starship? Yes. But when nobody dares, because the culture is, how dare you, and you'll be gone. And that is why you see movies, as I keep saying, when a movie is bad or mediocre even, you get the impression that everybody showed up for work every day on this thing for 3 months, 4 months, and they were just punching the clock and doing it and going home. They weren't having any fun. And I'm not talking about comedy versus drama here. I'm just talking about people should be enthused.
Yes.
I mean, I'll give you a personal example. I have 2 what are called stents in my what's called the widowmaker artery in my heart. And when they do that, they go in through your wrist and up through, and they put these little things in, and you're awake. You're under local, not general, and you're watching it on television. You're watching the same monitor they are. And my doctor, God bless him, if you're ever in LA and you need a heart doctor, let me know. I'll tell you who to go see. I'm listening to him, and as he gets it there and he opens it up and the blood starts to flow the way it should, he goes, "Yeah, look at that artery. That's great." That's the kind of doctor you want. You don't want one that says, "Yeah, okay, next." You want somebody who's enthusiastic about the project.
True.
You want, and I don't care if it's the director or the key grip or anybody else. You want somebody who gets up in the morning whistling a happy tune, brushing their teeth, saying, "Oh boy, I'm going into work on this thing." Not because they're making more money or less money, not because they're getting a credit or not getting a credit, but because they're doing what they are uniquely talented and skilled and experienced to do, and it's in service to something good.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't happen all the time, and especially if you're dragging people back and "Oh, well, it's been 4 months. Yeah, we know, but we want you back for 3 weeks, and we'll pay you, of course." And you go, "Yeah, fine, I'll take the money," but the thrill is gone, you know.
We'll go into more about the people's opinions about how the production for Captain America actually went. I just want to play this one last segment right here, and then we'll get going with the conversation.
Take some very aggressive positions on, okay, well, we're just going to have to be able to animate the full face on Jar Jar in 2 weeks.
Brilliant.
One of the reasons why John Knoll is actually saying that, by the way, is because, with more people and more time comes more cost, right?
Okay.
Listen, I have a reputation as a troublemaker back at ILM, always being.
Thank God you do. That's why you're here. Exactly.
Okay, so listen, I'm doing my damnedest to figure out, well, how do we even do a shot like this? And okay, well, these are the techniques I think they're going to be the most bang for the buck. And geez, well, you just have to be able to animate that in 2 weeks. And
The real point is how can we manage to change the operating procedures in a way that we can completely revolutionize the way we make movies so that this is all doable? Because it's not just that we have to do it for this picture, we have to do it for 2 more pictures. And also, if this picture works, then everybody also want it done for their picture. And what are we going to do?
I mean, that's
and by the way, you don't hear in that calculation, well, if we work it out for this picture, but it costs too much, we'll make it back when we sell the same effect to other movies.
True.
Which is what some people would say. "Oh yeah, but we'll get it back in the toys and the popcorn buckets."
That's a good point. That's a real good point right there.
That's the difference between George and everybody else. And you got to remember something about George. In his very, very early days, back when he was at my alma mater, our alma mater of USC Cinema, you may not know this, but the USC Cinema School in those days, not anymore, thanks to a beautiful building that he paid for a lot of, but was in a World War I cavalry stable on the campus. And I mean, the soundstage, quote unquote, had tethering rings embedded in the concrete of the floor, okay? And in those days, it was like, nobody has any money, nobody has any whatever. But the United States Navy sent their future combat cinematographers, whatever, to USC. And George got friendly with the Navy guys. And if you ever see the original short subject he made at USC of THX 1138, they're all wearing sailor suits. And all those fancy computerized futuristic panels, they're on a ship down at LA Harbor that they got able to use because the Navy guys were involved. That didn't cost any money. That was all, remember the character that James Garner plays in The Great Escape? The scrounger, the dog robber, they used to call him in the service, the guy who's able to get you whatever it is by trading. And that's the kind of guy this is. And just because he's a multi-zillionaire doesn't mean he's lost that mentality of how can we make it work for the money we've got available. And Now you're putting in people in charge who have never had that attitude. And especially in the case of a lot of these recent movies, they'll hire somebody with little to no big picture experiences.
Yes.
And think that they can suddenly, morph up to this kind of responsibility. All on the grounds that, hey, but they'll work cheap.
Yes, actually, this specific article going over Captain America: Brave New World actually talks about how this was kind of Marvel's MO to take an inexperienced director, give him what is essentially a 4-quadrant big picture budget, and expect everything to work all right on the other side, and how that can be very, first of all, there's really no way to tell whether or not that is going to work beforehand. That's one. Two, it ends up working out poorly more times than it works out very, very well. Like in the case of not Captain Marvel, but the Marvels.
Well, but see, it comes down to how you define the role of a director. If your definition of the role of a director is George Lucas, like Lorne says, businessman and filmmaker, that's all part of the job description. But if your definition is visual storytelling creative genius, which these people may or may not be either, and the heck with the backstage stuff, we'll handle that for them. Then in one way you get exactly what you pay for. But it's not a director, as we see the term used by polite society. When you say that, Lauren, about Lucas, think about it with Hitchcock, think about it with John Ford, think about it with any of the great directors, and you'll see that's all true. And you'll also see that even the guys who are more director than producer, I mean, Michael Curtiz, for example, or William Wyler, or any of these guys, they knew they had to get it done in a certain amount of time, on a certain amount of budget, just like the leader of our happy band of channels, Mr. WDW Pro, who I see just showed up. He was slumming today and thought, well, I'll go watch that show. It's kind of a nice respite from the wonderful world of MegaCon. But anyway, they've changed the definition because I think, putting aside all the financial and other reasons, these people in charge, the KKs and the Feiges and their ilk, they don't really want a director in the classic sense. They don't really want a creative artist that they hire and hand it to them and say, here, go make it wonderful, and this is how much money you've got. They want somebody they can manipulate and control and take credit for if it's a hit. Their problem is they keep turning out stinkers that lose money, and those movies become orphans. Nobody wants to take credit for them.
Is that kind of like the role of a director on a TV show rather than a film?
Well, people talk about TV directors are not, it's really about the executive producer, and that's sort of true.
Oh, the showrunner.
But you have to remember that directors on TV shows are under a much tighter budget and schedule gun. Okay. Right. And you also have to remember, when those of you who may have watched, for example, the Directors Guild Awards the other night, in the Directors Guild, we, and I can say we because I'm a proud member thereof, we talk about the director's team, which is the director, the unit production manager, all the assistant directors in television, the associate directors, and in the East Coast, not the West Coast, for some reason of ancient history, the location managers too. When you get nominated for a DGA award as a director, everybody on your team gets a nomination too, and we all get little statues of director's chairs. I have a few. And which is funny because in order to be hired as the assistant director, the director has to approve of you. And yet the assistant director and the UPM are the guys constantly telling the director, no. I want 50 extras. Sorry, you can only have 20. I want to shoot this over 3 days. Sorry, we can give you a day and a half. So there is a natural conflict going on within that team that I think, bottom line, makes the show better, whatever it is. But still, The point is, it's a collaboration, but it's not we're all one big happy family and you're the daddy and we're the kids. So anyway, it's an interesting dynamic. And of course, the other side of that dynamic is that since the production manager and the ADs are handling things like schedules and handling paperwork and handling signing in people, signing out people, keeping track of people, are they artists or are they managers? Are they on one side above the line or on the other side above the line? There's a blur there that's natural to the situation that doesn't really exist in other kinds of industries. So anyway, you can all contemplate all of that while we look at people in strange wigs.
Well, I wanted to highlight just how many people were actually, are part of any single production, and how,
Can I point something else out? You see Please? Video Village over there, all the video taps on the cameras?
Yes.
Where's George? He's looking at the performance actually happening on the stage.
That's a good point right there.
He might go back and replay those videos, but nowadays you get people sitting in Video Village and not paying any attention to what's going on the stage. See? Yeah. And there's a difference. There is a difference.
Big difference for sure. So we have heard, apparently there's this big Vulture article going over somebody attached to this production talking about how, the experience on set wasn't so great, and had some commentary on the reshoot process and all that. We can't go into the Vulture article because it's behind a paywall, but we do have a Game Rant article that features a lot of quotes from that Vulture article. If we scroll down right here,
if it was a huge hit and everybody loved it, you'd never see these stories. This is people saying, "Well,
yes, that's true.
It wasn't me; it was those other guys." So this is all kind of, to my mind,
it says right here,
it's irrelevant. And by the way, it's PR that doesn't sell tickets. So
that's true. Reshoots are a part of making any movie like this with a big budget.
No,
many? I don't think so. But this isn't Marvel's first rodeo. Entire sequences we shot won't make it into the film, and that's very expensive. As we went over before, folks, think about all the development process that it takes in order to get these shots produced. When you're actually in production, most expensive part when you have all the lighting, gaffers, people above the line, below the line,
you get
all
to this last sentence,
and
you suddenly lose all respect for this guy if you ever had any to begin with.
I'm not going to say the director was not equipped to handle that production. Basically, dealing with A-list egos was the issue. It was mainly just Harrison Ford, so that was a little disappointing. At the end of the day, it was the most tense Marvel shoot I've ever worked on. Everyone kind of felt their
what I meant.
Look,
I don't care if Harrison Ford is the biggest narcissist since Mussolini. It wasn't him that made this thing reshoot. It was a script that didn't work, or that somebody decided didn't work, or that somebody decided too late didn't work and kept rewriting. That's all.
They were saying, I think everybody on the crew knew that this was not going to be a good film. He said some of the action sequences were not believable. We had a lot of frustrations on set after principal photography was finished. Principal photography being, your actual shoot there. It was like, oh, we're going to need to introduce the leader of the Serpent Society. It was on, then it was off, and it was on again. That's a very expensive process to undergo. My coworkers who spent more time on Brave New World than I did said, yeah, it's been a really rough production.
Vash, I love you, but I'm bored with this. This is whiny after the fact, and it's nothing you couldn't just assume.
Yeah.
So
well,
I mean they have to make an article to peddle their papers, but not me.
Well, Lew, I think what you've said before, where you can see from a film that nobody maybe enjoyed themselves while working on it, I think that rings true here, at least from some people who have. Maybe worked on the production.
This insider guy, by the way, he obviously doesn't want to work again, right?
I don't think so. He'd
go be a plumber.
I wouldn't do it,
money, right?
Yeah.
No, I mean, really, it's like. Anyway.
It's just.
Could we
to underscore here, folks.
Could we cheer me up a little?
Well, I'll cheer you up.
Okay.
To make a movie, obviously it's a very long and enduring and expensive process, right?
Doesn't have to
when
be.
you're When you're looking, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. That's the thing. When you're looking at reshoots and when you're looking at people coming together again in order to reshoot a film, and then you're having to send that off to post with a very shorter time frame than maybe you would have had if you just got everything that you needed in principal photography. That obviously you're going to have a limited time, which drives up the price as well, reduces how well maybe some CGI or some post effects can actually be rendered. And it's just all these swirling things that hinder a production and increase that price right there. The upside here, Lew, is that hey, directors of the future, understand the issues with this process. Filmmakers of the future, understand this process. Develop your films in the front, and that way you can save money on the back end. Like George Lucas, as we just saw.
I defy any of the filmmakers of the future to turn down when Marvel comes to you and says, hey, we want you to direct the next Phase 47 Marvel movie, that they'll say, well, but wait, is it all developed? Is it all written? Is it all set in stone? And otherwise, I'm not doing it. Oh, okay, so you don't want the $20 million or the $10 million or the acclaim or the blame, but that's the price you pay. I just, in a real world, unfortunately, people will succumb to those pressures. I mean, I saw lots of people directing who had no business directing.
Yeah.
And they didn't know because nobody ever told them. And people were paying them the big bucks and giving them the title. And of course they're good. They must be, or else they wouldn't be getting all that. That's just human nature. That's not the movie business per se. But the bottom line is that the responsibility is not with the future directors of the world. The responsibility is with what should be the stockholders and the did you see those? Wait, but can you back that up a couple of frames?
Sure.
Where they were sitting. Do they look excited? Hey, we're ready for you. Keep going. Shit, here we go again. Okay, fine.
It's a long shoot.
God, if I have to, I guess I will, but
it's a long shoot. What are you going to do?
Yeah, well, what you going to do? Look at this guy over here with the hand. This guy sitting there going, I can't believe I'm getting paid for this. I'm sorry, but nobody's having any fun. We have no idea what those guys look like behind the mask. Mm-hmm. And by the way, go to that explosion again.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a big problem on sets where there's going to be some big instant action.
Yeah.
Watch. Is not flinching before it happens. I bet they shot that 10 times to get that guy to not do it. I did a movie once a million years ago where somebody was supposed to be hiding a gun in a purse in a dark room, and then the door opens. And the way I shot it was staying on that person. I just took a light and took a piece of cardboard and wiped across so that suddenly this bright beam of light swept across her and she looked up shocked. How do you get her to not be shocked before it opens? Because she knows it's going to happen.
Right.
In my case, I said, because there was no sound over it, because I was going to put music on, I said, just watch me. And I leaned up against this big 12-foot ladder. And I said, you're watching me and you're putting the gun and you're being very careful and you don't want anybody to notice. And I had told the guy doing the light effect, I pushed the ladder over. You better believe she jumped. Because this clattering ladder fell over and scared the crap out of her. And I got my shot and I said, thank you very much. Next. And you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do.
It's interesting you say that. I think the most famous story of what you're talking about or describing, this generating reaction problem for big effects pieces or big reaction shots.
I know this story. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Hans Gruber, right? Alan Rickman, he's being held over. It's a green screen right there. But the director wants a genuine reaction from Alan Rickman in this performance right here. And so when they count down, I think he let it go like a second or two early in order to get a genuine reaction that you see right there. So,
by the way, talk about reshoots. This movie, very, very well crafted, very, very well planned. But imagine if you didn't know you were going to do this shot and you didn't know it had to be a blue or a green screen, what if you dressed him for the entire 20 scenes before this in something the wrong color that was going to bleed through to the blue or green screen?
That's a fair point.
Reshoot 40 pages of the movie. or what? You know, I mean, all
Yes.
I'm saying is that's why we plan these things out ahead of time. That is why we look at it every which way from Sunday and figure out how the best way is to do it and the next best way is to do it and what we can afford versus what we'd like. And we figure it all out. And then we say, okay, that's what we're going to do on the day. Not, well, if it doesn't work, we can always reshoot it. It's commonplace in the industry now, according to articles in fanfic. So anyway. All right.
Again, folks, think about, having to get somebody like Alan Rickman back to reshoot the scene if something went wrong, like Lew said, if you didn't actually plan accordingly. Think about the costumes that you had to get back up, the set pieces.
I mean, what if he was wearing a green tie or a blue tie? Because, hey, it looked zippy, to the costume designer who never had to consider that. But see, a smart costume designer, way in pre-production, are you ever going to be having him against the screen? Because in that case, I got to make the colors work.
That's wow.
Okay. That's what people have to think about. And that's why people have to think outside their own particular specialty and understand the greater good.
See.
To be a cameraman, you have to understand editing. To be an editor, you have to understand production design. I mean, all of this goes together. And if you don't, you're going to have trouble right there in River City or Hollywood. London or wherever. Anyway.
But speaking of people who have no trouble at all because they're watching us, here we go. Mark Daly with the $5. Thank you so much. Whether the movie is about Captain America or Falcon, it's got legs like Professor X. Whew, that's some dark humor right there. But you're not wrong. With a B- cinema score, I mean, again, folks, that is I think lower than the Eternals. I think is what was.
Let's see, B-
being said right there.
The regret is why they didn't give it a C.
Yes.
Even a C+ is a bigger negative headline than a B-. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, I mean, I'm glad it has such affection for the character and for what might have been. But it still doesn't happen in the movie, apparently. So I haven't seen
Below
it. I can't judge it. But anyway.
That's a lower score than the Eternals, the Marvels, Quantumanias, Dark Phoenix, and Venom: The Last Dance, I guess, was B-. So you know how this is going to go.
Venom: The Last Dance?
Venom 3?
Yeah. I've seen the little short clips on YouTube, and that's enough for me, but...
Indeed.
I'm a stick in the mud. I like plot and story and fun and interest and great. Now, see, and that's not a question of gore. The movie that we of the Genre Guys did last night, which is a movie many of you will never have heard of, but I hope you watch it when we do it. And those of you who are pro channel members, you'll be seeing it shortly. And those of you who are here, will see it in a couple of months. It's called The Silent Partner. And it's a little Canadian movie from 1978. With Elliot Gould and Donald Pleasance and Susanna York, and a very young, not playing a comic part, just getting a little work as an actor, John Candy as one of the minor characters, by the way. And what it's about is a guy who's a bank teller who everybody thinks is basically Clark Kent. And he kind of is. He collects tropical fish, and he's got no girlfriend, and he lives his quiet little life. But it's Christmas at the big mall in Toronto where the bank is. And he sees a guy in a Santa Claus suit come into the bank and then write something, but then throw it away. And he goes over and picks it up after the bank closes and sees that he put a note on a deposit slip saying, "The thing in my pocket is a gun. Give me all your cash." And he thinks, well, God, that Santa Claus was going to rob the bank. And when he goes through the mall, he sees this Santa with the ringing bell and the kind of Salvation Army sort of stud up with a big sign that says, "Give, give, give." And the G's are the same unique formation, which kind of looks like a hammer and sickle, as the G in the gun in the note. And he realizes that's the guy. And he figures, well, maybe he'll come back. So what does mild-mannered Elliot Gould, who is the vault teller, and therefore he's the one who gets all the big cash deposits from the businesses in the mall, he starts putting most of the money in his drawer, in his lunchbox, instead of in the drawer. When the guy comes in and robs the bank and pulls the thing, he's scared and gives him the money in the drawer. And the guy says, "That's not enough. You got a lot more than that." And he reaches down and pulls out the clip with the automatic alarm button on it. And the guy runs off. And when the newspapers announce how much was stolen, the crook, who's this nasty, sick SOB, played wonderfully by Christopher Plummer, realizes he got robbed because he didn't get anywhere near that much money. And so he and Elliot Gould begin this cat and mouse over this money, and it's just this neat little caper picture. Well, that has a bunch of very gory stuff in it at a couple of points, and it's not for people who want to avoid that. So it's not a question of the violence. It's not a question of me rejecting, let's say, Venom chewing people's heads off and whatever. It's just that it has to fit and has to work and have some interesting people involved that you give a darn about. I keep citing that famous, to me, and people who hear me repeat it over and over, that National Lampoon story that they did about the suddenly everyone was run over by a truck school of dramatic criticism, which is, if in the book you're reading, in the movie you're watching, in the TV show you're watching, in the play you're watching, you turn the page and the next line is, and then suddenly everyone was run over by a truck. Do you care? Do you give a damn that they're, and in a lot of cases, okay, fine, next. So it can be done, and it can be done on low budgets, and it can be done if you have a script that's tight and characters that people care about. And anyway, you'll see that on the Genre Guys. There's a little sneak preview. Anyway.
Also, too,
and meanwhile, we're finally getting Genre Guys going here again, right? Because you showed me before we started
finally
that great original quote unquote disaster movie, Airport, not Airplane, Airport, is finally going to make its debut here on the channel. And wow, as I keep saying over and over and over and over again, if you just think Dean Martin is like a funny, drunk, and good singer, you want to see a guy who can act, watch that movie. You want to see a guy who can hold his own with Burt Lancaster and everybody else. And geez. And then, of course, my favorite line from the whole thing of George Kennedy as Joe Petroni, the mechanic, and he pushes the plane to the firewall to get it out of the rut that it's in so they can clear the runway for the disabled airplane. And the guy sitting next to him, young kid, says, gee, the book says it won't do that. And he looks at him, he says, that's the great thing about the 707, kid. It can do everything but read. I love that line. Oh, is that a fun movie? Line. They knew how. See, and again, they knew how to balance humor, suspense, characters, pathos, even when you consider Maureen Stapleton as the wife of the bomber. And anyway, it's a great movie, and you will be seeing all about it, and then go watch it for real, or vice versa.
Absolutely. We have The Mum with 199. Saw Cap. It's 2 out of 10. Also saw Nisa 2. That's 8 out of 10.
Oh, so I hear. That's really wonderful. Although the numbers they're announcing of it making billions and billions are coming out of China. And it's funny how a nation that, as far as I know, invented the abacus can't do math too well or accurately somehow. Anyway, so who knows?
Maybe they do math really well, Lew.
Yeah, well, okay, if you say so. But
now there's one more feature. There's one more feature that we have to feature before we sign off today, and that is Lew's Backlot Jukebox.
Oh, yes, of course. Music, maestro, please. Folks, I just picked one of my all-time favorite scores of all time, and hopefully one of yours if you don't know it. And that is, of course, The Sons of Katie Elder by Elmer Bernstein. And this is a score that not only personifies, I think in a way even more than The Magnificent Seven or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the ultimate all-American Western score. Second, maybe after this, would be Comancheros. But I was actually going to use this score in a stage and theater production that I was going to do about the Old West. It's that good. And, of course, it's John Wayne and Dean and Earl Holliman. And this was right after Wayne's cancer, this movie. It's a great movie. Go watch the movie. But, God, the music. Oh, God, the music. It's just your basic all-American Western score, as you'll hear when you listen to it on our jukebox.
Absolutely. Oh, I love the jukebox.
And, again, this is on this guy's soundtrack, Fred, who puts together these 10, 12, 15-minute suites of the scores of all the great movies. And I encourage you to explore all the stuff that he's done, because they're routinely excellent and worth some musical time if you like music and you like movie music.
Indeed. That will be, Juliet, tomorrow's Genre Guys will come out at, I believe it's 9:30 a.m. Eastern is when that's going to hit this channel right there. So you got a little bit. I was supposed to release it Friday, but didn't have any internet on Friday. Great. So in order to
when that
ensure
happens.
that in order to give it its best chance, it's going to be coming out 9:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. So there you go, right there. But it is done. It's in the can. It's going out. And yes, definitely check
Mary
out
White,
LEW'S.
weren't they the Bernstein Bears with another E in there somewhere? I could be wrong, but
Perhaps.
she said
You want to
Elmer
check out
Bernstein.
LEW'S Backlot JUKEBOX this week, though. It's in the description and it's in the chat right now. If you want to go ahead and see that amazing Phantom Menace making of documentary, which I highly recommend, that's also in the chat as well. Oh, looks like we have another super chat from Disney Fan 55. $2. Vash, Grandpa knew the Duke. Yes, that's true. That's my mother right there. And yes, my grandfather did know the Duke because every once in a while they would actually come out to Arizona in order to shoot scenes for productions. And my grandfather, who ran a gas station, actually knew quite a bit of the local and maybe, traveling, touring celebrities. So pretty cool.
And Mark Daly said, no actor can sing like Dino. No singer has Dino's acting chops. Absolutely true. And Dean loved making Westerns. Dean absolutely loved making Westerns, and he and John Wayne were close friends. So there's that. And,
very cool.
Anyway.
Very cool. That just about concludes our show here. Again, you can find the amazing Lew Wasserman, actually at Universal again. No, but you can find Lew Wasserman's Ghost on WW Pro.
That's not only not the real thing, it's not even an incredible simulation. Please take that away. Oh, God.
Indeed.
Did they give him a Walt mustache in that thing? I don't know. Don't show it again. I don't want to know. But now, if that statue starts getting IMDb listings, then we'll know the world is totally topsy-turvy as if it wasn't already. So
you can also email your questions at t3ponline@yahoo.com. We will be taking questions definitely on the next show right here. This is a pretty packed show here, so very much apologize if we didn't get to your questions. Send them in. We'll get to them. We never leave a question unanswered unless it's something
no turn unstoned.
Yes, indeed. Yes, you can find LW Ghost though on the Pro channel, producing Genre Guys, and also contributing to amazing fare, whether it be for That Park Place.
Well, and with you every Thursday at 4, if I can make it.
Every Thursday at 4.
Along with all the other great people that are on there. My God, I think I saw Barry Place in the audience today. Yeah. And so, if it's interesting, I'm interested. If it's boring, as you've been able to see, sometimes I'm not.
Sometimes you're not, but that's okay.
Sometimes I feel like a nut. Sometimes I don't. But
well, we had a lot of fun with you, Lew, on the T3PO Live every single Thursday, like Lew mentioned there at 4 p.m. Eastern. Had a lot of fun, and it was a big panel. We're gonna trim that down just a little bit for the next show, but it's gonna be very, very cool. Definitely subscribe to the channel if you're looking for that. Genre Guys Airport will be out tomorrow, so subscribe for that. Like this video if you haven't liked this video yet. Share us out, as it helps us out tremendously against the YouTube algorithm, and we will see you next Hollywood Backlot with Lew and you Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Take care, everybody. We'll see you real soon. Or maybe we'll see you on the Backlot. And there you go. That sounds better. Thanks, guys.